Hi everyone. It's been a little bit. I got busy with some other work, but I'm back to re-engage with the CSD off-the-cuff videos. So if this happens to be your first one, my really brief description is I am going through a process with Scrum Alliance where they want to take all instructors through an interview process where we will be presenting topics from our classes back to a panel of people who are also certified instructors, and they will pick the topic at random. And we need to take 5 minutes to decide how we want to teach it and then teach it back within 20 minutes. So I'm doing this for practice. And hopefully you'll get two things out of it. One, if you happen to be interested in this process, you'll see a little bit of how this looks. Maybe that'll help you prepare for your interviews. And two, learn a little bit about certified Scrum developer classes as we go through. Now, of course, this is not how I would teach inside the class. We have a lot more interaction. We get hands-on. We actually build applications, and we kind of do group projects and things. Here, we have some more constraints. So I'm limited to only being able to use a whiteboard or a flip chart and little pieces of paper. That's about the extent of what I can use to teach. I'm actually going to use a tablet that shows on screen because I don't want to chew through flip chart paper. It's expensive. And for YouTube videos, this will work just fine. So one of the things I do, I'm going to do it right now, is I'm going to pick a learning objective at random. So let me get that up on the screen. And our random topic is architecture and design. 3.1, outline at least 3 benefits of technical excellence. So I'm going to have to, for this, put out there is a knowledge level, so I'm not necessarily trying to apply it. I'm not necessarily trying to get into deep analysis, but I want to at least be able to share back 3 benefits of technical excellence. That's a bit of a vague topic. I'll take 5 minutes to figure out how I want to teach that, and I will be back. Okay, so full disclosure, I came back from my 5 minutes. I did a 20-minute presentation. I may upload that later, but it was a disaster. It was a real struggle because this particular topic, it's simple in that it's just 3 things from a knowledge standpoint, right? I could tell you in 30 seconds what are the 3 things that, like 3 examples of benefits we get from technical excellence. I could probably tell you 10 in the next couple of seconds, but usually what we would do is we would teach this, we talk about it throughout the class, and at this point I'd say, so remember we talked about this, 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 and we do a recap. In fact, I don't even need to say anything in a normal class because I would ask you as class members, hey, look back on all of these and just write down the things where technical excellence is beneficial to you. So this is a really interesting learning objective in the sense that it's sort of, I'd never teach it in isolation. And so I'm trying to come up with a way to teach it. And I came up with one, and I thought it was a great idea. And I got 5 minutes in, and it was a disaster. It was not a good idea. So, like I said, I may put that up just so that people can kind of see where I failed and can learn from that. I don't mind having that transparency there, but it was definitely a disaster. So I do want to take a second take at it, right? This is a learning journey for me. I may get presented with these. This is not the only learning objective in the CSD learning objectives where I would just never teach it in isolation, or I would never just like pick this and build a lesson around it because it ties into so many other places. So I gotta be able to do this if that's one of the things that they give me. So here we go. I'm gonna try take 2. I'm gonna put what will hopefully be a better take in this video, and then I'll let you see my failures in another one. All right. So the first thing to talk about is what is technical excellence, right? It's a very vague term. So technical excellence is simply the practices and principles that we would use to avoid the irresponsible accumulation of technical debt. So technical debt can be explained. So let me jot that down, right? We've got technical excellence. We can think of as sort of the cure for, or the mitigating mechanics for technical debt. So what is technical debt? Well, technical debt is really the exact same thing as if we say financial debt, something that many of us can relate to. We have either credit cards, or we have an auto loan, or a mortgage, or right. And one of the things I would probably want to do to get people connected to this is think about all of the things that can go wrong if you have an irresponsible accumulation of financial debt. Right? You run up your credit cards, you take out a mortgage that's way bigger than you can handle. What are the things that can go wrong? And in that exercise, you write that down, and you might get some feedback like, well, you could run out of money, you could go bankrupt, you could have more, lots of interest, so more of your money goes towards interest and less towards the things that you want. So these are all valid things, and they translate really, really well over. Like, what are the challenges of technical debt? Challenges of technical debt, more of your work goes towards fixing that technical debt and fixing things you didn't expect to go wrong. It reduces reliability, right? So if you take on a lot of debt, your credit score goes down. You're not considered a reliable person to lend to. You have less options available to you. So we have right, our interest payments. Don't worry, I'll tie this back to technical debt in a moment. Are we a reliable person to lend to? Lendee, is that how that goes? All right. And it just kind of, it binds us into a difficult situation. So when we have debt, our money is tied up. Those are things that we can't easily move away from. And so we get tied up, which reduces our ability to be flexible in where we spend our money, what purchases we decide to make, that sort of thing. So lack of flexibility. And all of these transfer directly over into technical debt, right? And I want to show you that now. So as we're talking about technical debt, but remember, our technical excellence is the cure for our technical debt. So the more we take on these practices that we would broadly describe as technical excellence, the more we mitigate the risks of technical debt. So let's start with that first one, interest payments. What does that look like in the technical world? Well, it looks like this. I'm going to show you two graphs. The first graph is going to divide our work up into 4 parts. I'm going to have maintenance, we'll abbreviate that, and bugs on this y-axis. And I'm going to have new features and feature improvements on my x-axis. So early in a project, I have a lot of new features and feature improvements. And sure, bugs happen. And I do have to maintain my product as I build it. So there's a little bit of that work, but it's not a lot. Most of my work goes into new features and feature improvements. And that's great, because when I'm working that way, we have a value over time, and my value curve is nice and steep in a positive way, right? So when I have a work profile like this on the left, I have a value curve like this on the right. That's fantastic. All of my business stakeholders are happy. My users are happy. We get our new features quickly. Great. Now, here's the thing. If I don't practice good engineering practices, good product development practices, that technical excellence that we talked about up here, um, then what will happen is I'll build up technical debt. Now, what does technical debt look like? Well, maybe that looks like fragility. The things don't kind of cleanly connect as well. The different pieces of the application don't cleanly connect, or we forget how we built it. The guy who built that, he left for another job, and now I got to go in and figure it out, and I don't quite get it exactly. So we would group this under maintenance work, right? I got to refigure it out or rework stuff that maybe I didn't have to otherwise, and maybe I don't always get it right. So I get unexpected interactions between things, and that creates more bugs. But our work week's still only 40 hours. So where's that time come from if I have to do all this extra maintenance work and bug work? Well, it comes from those new features and feature improvements. That time shrinks. So now my work profile looks like this. So what does my value profile look like? Well, my value profile starts to taper off because those bugs and maintenance, they're important to do because your system will fail if you don't, but they don't deliver the kind of value that new features and feature improvements deliver. So we have to spend more time to get the same amount of value that we used to. And many of us have experienced this, right? We get into these projects that you're like, oh my God, why does this take so long? It's just adding a button. But it's taking so long because maintenance and bugs are taking so much of the time. I worked with one organization. We mapped this out between the different teams, and we found that one team was so severe, 96% of their time over the course of a couple of sprints, 96% of their time went to maintenance and bugs. So the lead time to get a feature, if I put a feature in their list now to get worked on, I might get it in about 3 years with their current velocity of new features being worked on, right? So obviously this is an extreme example of that interest payments, right? The interest starts eating up how much of your resources you actually have available to apply to the things that you want. Same way here, your technical debt interest starts eating up your time of your developers from the new and improved features that you want to create. So first value of technical excellence is it lets us put our effort on high value items. Sorry, I know there's a little bit of lag on the screen here. So there's my first benefit. Second benefit, we talked about reliability. So I want to step away from the technical side for a moment because not all benefits of technical excellence are technical. Same way that fiscal responsibility, in your personal finances are not all about just the dollars and cents. We talked about this reliable lendee. What's your credit score going to do? Are people willing to lend you money? That's a social interaction, and we have the same problem in technical debt. If I think about it, which of these, you just think about it this way. I'm going to present you two teams. One team has this work profile. Another team has this other work profile. So which team are you going to send your work to if you have a choice? Right? You're going to send it to that one that does mostly new and improved work that keeps its technical debt under control. So I have a stakeholder, and I can choose which one of these teams, my super fast drawing of teams, which one of these teams I want to send my work to. I'm going to choose the team that's likely to get me my new features faster. Of course, why would I do anything else? So what do we call this inherent sort of rating system? Well, we call it reputation. right? In financial debt, we would call it a credit score, but that's really just a numeric representation of our reputation, our ability to effectively manage our debt, and therefore effectively use the rest of our capital to get to the things that we want, right? So just like a lender will be evaluating the reputation of a lendee, your stakeholders are going to be evaluating the reputation of your team, and a huge part of that, because of what we talked about up here, is based on your ability to manage your technical debt, or technical excellence. So item number 1, it lets us put our effort on high value items. Item number 2, it improves our reputation amongst stakeholders. That might be other members of the business, executives, your users, right? We have this improved reputation by having technical excellence. What's the last thing that it does? The last thing that I want to talk about is, let's go back to the technical for a moment. Or it's a mix of technical and social. And I'm going to start with what it is, and that's flexibility. And let's use that financial example. If I constantly pay down my debts and I keep on top of them, when an unexpected emergency comes up, maybe plumbing breaks in my basement and my whole basement floods, and it's going to be, thousands of dollars to fix it. Let's imagine these two teams that we talked about before are homeowners. One that managed its technical debt well, managed its financial debt well, is now going to have the flexibility to go and take out a personal loan or add it to a credit card, or whatever you need to do to spend that large amount of capital in order to quickly fix the basement before mold sets in, before other problems come up, right? Fix that pipe, fix the basement, clean everything up, replace the wood that was damaged, whatever else has to happen, so that you don't have all the add-on problems that happen if you have a wet basement, right? A flooded basement. Now, the person who hasn't manage their financial debt effectively, and they have huge full credit cards, they're up to its max, and they don't have the reputation to take out another loan, and they don't have these other things, well, what's going to happen to them? Well, they're going to do the best they can with the money that they have on hand, which maybe means they fix the core problem, but they don't get to replace all the wood that was water damaged, and then mold sets in, and so then they have to pay more money to get the mold taken care of, and then they get locked into this really harsh cycle of spending more and more and more and more and more money for the same problem, because they didn't have the flexibility to make the choice that they wanted to early on. So, not meant to be an economics class, let's tie this back to technical debt. What are we doing on technical debt? Well, so what happens when we have technical debt? So we would have talked about in the class the idea of emergent architecture and making just-in-time decisions, making decisions as we go. Also making decisions about how we do our work in a way that assumes they're going to change. And if we take this along with Scrum, and this is weird, I'm kind of giving a recap in this explanation. Oh, hey, look, my cat. I'm giving a recap in this explanation. But basically what we have, remember, when we talk about Scrum, each sprint, I've got this usable, shippable product, right? Or potentially shippable, the way Scrum used to refer to it. But I could potentially let users utilize this particular increment of the product, which means it needs to be stable, and then I'm going to make changes to it. So a lot of times the architectural decisions I make here are going to work well enough for now, with the flexibility built in to change it when I go here and my architecture and design needs shift. So this is another part of technical excellence, that part of making good technical decisions is making them in a way that I can pay down the debt that they create immediately. I can bring it back to a stable state. So again, I'm kind of leveraging this analogy a little bit. A stable state for financial debt is usually that my credit cards are paid down either all the way or to a low level, that I'm keeping on top of my agreed payment plan for loans, that I don't have other unpaid outstanding debt just sitting around out on my budget, right? That's a stable state for finances. For technology, a stable state is I could give this to a customer and it would be a perfectly feasible, technically excellent solution. And I'm returning to this every 2 weeks. Now that means that because I'm returning to this every 2 weeks and I'm prepared for the needs of next 2 weeks, not to be the same as the needs of the last 2 weeks. I'm going to come back to that statement in a second. I'll do it in the debrief. Sprints are not necessarily 2 weeks. My head got locked onto that. I'll come back to it in the debrief. That I'm now creating the flexibility that at every single one of these hops, I can completely change what I need to put my effort and my resources somewhere else. So, just to recap, high value items stay the bulk of what I do. I build a reputation for having a work profile that's high value, for having this high value curve, and this third thing, flexibility. I can easily move and pivot to what will help my stakeholders, my users, my customers the most, as opposed to being locked into old decisions. These are three of many benefits of technical excellence. Okay, time for a debrief. So I said I would mention a debrief. I kind of caught myself in that flexibility section. I said, oh, it's every 2 weeks I can do this. And I don't know, in my head, 2 weeks is by far the most common sprint length. And in my head, that was just what I latched onto. And I kind of caught it towards the end. Of course, Scrum Guide allows for sprints to be, oh my God, up to a month in length. So obviously each of those checkpoints could be up to a month. Tying back to a really common question, why that was my timer from the 20 minutes. A common question in classes is, why do we have to have a month or less? And oddly enough, this reinforces it. Well, those are my touch points. That's my flexibility. I can easily move from one thing to the next each sprint. And I mean, even a month in modern environments is a very long time. Most companies are not particularly happy being locked into that level of flexibility where they're just stuck in a certain direction for an entire month. So a lot of times they want shorter than that. But certainly from a Scrum standpoint, we say, well, let's make sure that we're coming back to that every single month. So the other thing that I wanted to call out that I realize is a bit of a gap. So I often default to an old Scrum Guide terminology, potentially shippable product, right? So each sprint is supposed to complete a potentially shippable increment of your product, and that's not the wording it uses. So I'm going to go over on this monitor. I'm going to cheat because I don't know. I don't remember anymore what they switched it to. I remember that I'm not happy that they switched it, but I don't really get a big say in that. So let me see. Sprint events, sprint view. There's my increment. So in the Scrum Guide, it says an increment is a concrete stepping stone toward the product goal. Each increment is additive to all prior increments, thoroughly verified, ensuring that all increments work together. In order to provide value, the increment must be usable. So that's the new phrasing, is usable. Here's what it is. It's a certified class. So I think it's important that you gotta, when you're doing certified classes, it is important that that you use consistent terminology, especially for people who are new to it. If you use inconsistent terminology, it can just add confusion. Um, a lot of times what I would do in a class, though, is I would say, like, hey, look, the official answer is usable. It used to be potentially shippable. I kind of like potentially shippable better because, back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth and you would ship out software to your customers, like on CDs or discs, um, or discs, if you go back far enough. Um, you had to have it. Remember, like, you couldn't hotfix. You couldn't, like, just upload an update or patch in a fix for a bug. It had to work. It had to actually work the way it was supposed to, and then you sent them the thing. And I feel like that really sets a clear standard that usable just doesn't. Anyway, it's a rabbit hole. But this is an important thing when we're going through. For anyone who's watching this to look at what am I going to do when I go into my interviews, very, very important. We want to provide consistent answers, and those consistent answers we're looking to be consistent with the Scrum Guide because it's really the only resource that all of us trainers have to create consistency by aligning there. So current version of Scrum Guide calls the increment usable. Past that, like I said, this was kind of a rough one. I would never choose to teach it this way inside of a class. I think this is this is a weird, contrived kind of way of teaching it. Not what I like to do, but I may be presented with exactly this sort of scenario inside of the panel review. So I'm practicing it. I would love any feedback. This one was rough. I hope I get some really good critiques. I would love to see comments or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let me know what you think. What could I have done better on this? Let me know. Thank you.